The dark side of loneliness no one talks about. The room. There is a room somewhere right now. Could be an apartment. Could be a house. Could be the room you're sitting in. And in that room, there is a person who hasn't had a real conversation in days. Not a meaningful one. Not the kind where someone actually sees them. They're not crying. They're not in crisis. They look completely fine from the outside. But something inside them has gone very, very quiet. If any part of that felt familiar, this video is for you. And I need you to stay until the end. Because what I'm about to tell you, changes everything. What this video is actually about. We need to talk about loneliness. Not the kind you feel after a breakup. Not the kind that goes away when you call a friend. I'm talking about the kind that lives quietly underneath everything. The kind you carry to work every morning and bring back home every night. The kind that makes you perform okayness so well for so long that you forget you're performing. Psychologists have been studying loneliness for decades, and what they've found is deeply unsettling. Not because loneliness is rare, but because it's everywhere, and almost no one is talking about it honestly. In this video, we're going to change that. We're going to go through what loneliness actually is, scientifically, psychologically, neurologically. We're going to follow someone through it, and we're going to arrive somewhere that might surprise you. Stay with me. Loneliness is not what you think. Here is the first thing most people get wrong. Loneliness is not about being physically alone. You can be alone in a room, perfectly content, and you can be surrounded by 50 people and feel it crushing you. Loneliness, at its core, is a perception. It's the gap between the connection you have and the connection you need. And that gap can exist even in a marriage, even in a family, even in a friendship that's been going for 20 years. In 2023, the US Surgeon General issued an official advisory. He called loneliness an epidemic, not a feeling, not a phase, an epidemic. The data was this: more than half of American adults reported measurable levels of loneliness, and the numbers across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia told the same story. But here is what made researchers stop. The loneliest demographic wasn't the elderly. It wasn't people living alone. It was young adults, 18 to 34. The most connected generation in human history. The generation that grew up with social media, with instant messaging, with the ability to reach anyone on earth in seconds, was the loneliest. Something had gone wrong, and it wasn't the isolation. It was the connection itself. A story you might recognize. Her name was Maya. She was 29. On paper and on Instagram, her life looked full. A job she was good at. Friends she'd had since university. A city she'd chosen because it felt like possibility. But every morning, she woke up with a feeling she couldn't name. Not sadness exactly. More like distance. Like she was watching her life through glass. Present, but not quite there. She went to brunch. She laughed at the right moments. She replied to messages within minutes, so no one would think something was wrong. She was, by every visible measure, completely fine. But at night, after the last notification, after the last scroll, she would lie in the dark and feel the silence settle on her like something heavy. And in that silence, a thought would come. Not dramatic, not loud, just a quiet, terrible question. Does anyone actually know me? Not follow me, not like my posts, not enjoy my company. Know me. She never said it out loud. Because how do you say that? How do you tell people you're lonely when you have people? How do you explain the particular loneliness of being surrounded and still unseen? You don't. So you don't. And the silence grows. And the performance continues. And slowly, without realizing it, the gap between who you are and who you show the world becomes the loneliest place you've ever lived. What it does to your brain and body. Now here is where it stops being emotional and starts being alarming. Because loneliness doesn't just feel bad, it physically changes you. Neuroscientist John Cacioppo spent decades studying what chronic loneliness does to the human brain. His findings were sobering. When a person experiences prolonged loneliness, the brain enters a state called hypervigilance. It begins scanning every social interaction, every glance, every pause, every tone of voice for signs of threat or rejection. A friend who seems distracted becomes someone who doesn't care. A cancelled plan becomes proof that you don't matter. A room of strangers becomes a room of people who are judging you. The brain, trying to protect you from further pain, makes everything worse. Because hypervigilance doesn't just change how you feel, it changes how you behave. You pull away before people can leave. You interpret neutral faces as hostile. You stop reaching out because reaching out means risking rejection. And rejection, to a lonely brain, feels genuinely dangerous. Cacioppo called it a self-reinforcing loop. Loneliness makes you behave in ways that push people away, which deepens the loneliness, which intensifies the hypervigilance, which pushes more people away. And then there's the body. Chronic loneliness keeps cortisol, your primary stress hormone, elevated almost constantly, not the spike you get before a presentation, a low, steady, relentless flood of it, day after day, month after month. That sustained cortisol does measurable damage to the cardiovascular system, to the immune response. Researchers at Brigham Young University found that chronic loneliness increases the risk of early death by 26%. That is more than obesity, more than smoking 15 cigarettes a day, according to some analyses. We have public health campaigns for smoking. We put warnings on cigarettes. We don't put warnings on loneliness. Because it's invisible. Because it looks like just a feeling. Because the people suffering from it are usually very good at pretending they're not. The stage no one warns you about. Here is the stage that psychologists are most concerned about, and almost no one talks about it. After a person has been lonely for long enough, something shifts. They stop waiting for connection, not because they don't want it, but because wanting it has become too painful. They start to build a life that doesn't require it. They meet their own emotional needs quietly, efficiently, invisibly. They have conversations in their head. They process their own feelings without telling anyone. They celebrate quietly. They grieve quietly. They exist quietly. From the outside, it looks like independence, like someone who has it all together, like someone who doesn't need much. From the inside, it feels like slowly disappearing. Psychologists call this self-sufficient loneliness, and it is the hardest stage to reach people in, because the person has adapted. They've become so good at being alone that offering them connection starts to feel threatening, unfamiliar, too much to hope for. Maya reached this stage at some point in her second year in the city. She stopped texting first. She stopped suggesting plans. She told herself she was just busy, that she'd reach out when things slowed down. Things never slow down. That's the lie loneliness tells you. That there will be a better moment to be known, a safer moment to be seen. There isn't. There's only now. And now keeps passing. The call worth making. Maya eventually made a call, not because she was ready, not because she'd figured it out, but because one night she caught herself having an argument in her head with a friend she hadn't spoken to in 4 months, and she realized she'd been talking to people who weren't there instead of talking to the people who were. So she called, just to say she'd been quiet, just to say she missed them. It was awkward. It was small. It was the most honest she'd been in over a year. I'm not going to tell you that one phone call fixed everything. It didn't. But it stopped the disappearing. And sometimes that's enough to start. Here is what I want you to take from this. Loneliness is not a character flaw. It is not proof that something is wrong with you. It is a signal. The same kind of signal as hunger, as thirst, as pain. Your mind telling you something real is missing. And signals, unlike silence, can be answered. The question isn't whether you're lonely. The question is, how long are you going to wait to do something about it? Think about it.